Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. This is James Thomas. I am an enterprise solution architect with Velosio. And a little bit about my background. I'm actually a chartered accountant by profession, but I've spent almost 20 years in the IT consulting space, specifically in the services industry, with a focus on project-based organizations. I have been in a variety of roles, including consulting, but I've also been a financial controller and operations accountant before I joined consulting. So I've had real world experience on the operational side, and that's been very useful, of course, on the consulting side. Today, I'm actually joined by Paul, and he has had multiple roles in software development, project management, and consulting, and has spent the last 15 years focused on Microsoft Dynamics Finance and Operations, which is the solution that we will be showcasing today. Welcome, Paul. All right, so Paul, if you would go to the next slide. So today's agenda is we're going to just recap on a single slide the quote to cash solution. We have covered this on each of the other webinars, so it'll be a very abbreviated session on the presentation from the PowerPoint. We really want to spend most of our time today in the solution. So we're going to adopt a Q&A format. We have gathered some questions from our peers, and I will be posing those questions to Paul, and Paul will respond by showcasing the capabilities of the solutions and how we resolve some of these common challenges that project-based companies have. So the typical solution that we see in majority of our client base is a very siloed set of applications. This slide is very busy. It is sometimes confusing as well because there's a lot going on. But we've designed the slide to purposely represent this level of confusion and activity because that's the reality on the ground. The typical quote to cash process is summarized at the top there, from opportunity contract management, project management, resource and subcontractor management, to procurement, billing and revenue recognition, and billing intelligence. And there's a lot of interdependencies by these core functions. Sometimes they're done by different departments. And so the quote to cash process is complex, mainly because of the amount of collaboration that is required through the entire process. And today we'll talk about the benefits of having this entire work stream in a fully integrated manner and how it really removes a lot of the errors, the duplicity of effort, the manual transactions that have to be created, and really show you the benefits of a fully integrated solution. Just ahead of our Q&A session with Paul, I wanted to just lay the foundation of the solution that we will be showcasing today, which is Microsoft Dynamics 365. As you can see from this slide, it's a suite of applications. It consists of multiple applications that are shown in that core. What we will be covering today is finance and operations, but there are CRM components to this, fully integrated, like sales, service, and marketing. There is a professional services application, a field service application, and full-blown HR as well. And all of this is wrapped around the Office 365 and Power Platform components that are all part of the Dynamics 365 umbrella. All right, so as I promised, very short PowerPoint presentation. And Paul, we will go to our first question. So here's our first question being posed. My customer or prospect requests that quotes and proposals be submitted in a specific, very detailed format. But this is not the structure we use when we execute the project. So for instance, we may have a quotation that's done in a very specific way to meet the formats and requirements of our prospect or customer. But that's not really the way we manage projects. You know, our project managers want to see the project in a very specific format that aligns with the way they manage costs and revenues, manages equipment, materials, and people. So Paul, here's your first question. Is there a way to manage the project differently than how it was originally quoted? How about that for a first question, Paul?
I think it's a good question, James. So what I would like to do is actually show in Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations how we solve this. So I'm going to switch to Dynamics right away. So this is the solution, Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations. And when I look at the quotation, just like we talked about earlier, that's part of the question, you will typically see that my clients, they will ask for very detailed quotations. Typically, they will ask for every activity that we have in the work breakdown structure, a detailed quote. So let me quickly have a look at a quotation. This is a quote number 50. You can also see that it's already transferred into a project. And what I'm going to show you is that we actually calculated quite detailed. And let's have a look at the advanced work breakdown structure, as we call it. And what you see here is a typical project where we have discovery and scope and design and planning. And these are all going to be projects. So in my work breakdown structure, I say projects and very detailed activities that I have to quote to my customer. But what I also see is that I introduced here cost codes. And so instead of looking at it in a very detailed way, like here, for example, I have to quote on installation and I have to quote on procurement, and procurement consists of hours and items that I need for this specific activity or work package. But you can also see that I entered cost codes in here. And that means that we can accumulate all cost and revenue into cost codes. And by the way, you can also post it financially like this. So instead of looking at it very detailed, if I go to my cost code overview, then I can see that it's quite comprehensive. For installation, I have a certain cost and bit value and a certain margin. And also for that purchasing task, you can see I have a certain cost value and bit value. So for a project manager in a later phase, it's a lot easier to follow up on this level instead of having to go into the 200 or maybe even more activities that I have on my project. Now, when we transfer this quote into a project, which means that the contract is awarded to us, a project is created, I can go directly from my quote view into my project, but I can also go back into the menu, and as a project manager, I can then see the projects that are assigned to me. Now, looking at that same project, just like we did on the quote, if I go to my advanced work breakdown structure, I will basically just see the same thing. But when I go to my cost codes, there you can see that also the follow-up is done on a very detailed level. But I think that's part of a future question. So what we can see here is the current cost value, but also all kinds of other information that help us analyze the cost of this project. That's what I want to show, James.
Yeah, so that was really good, Paul. So essentially, you know, we can take a quote and really create an alternative view that best suits the way we manage our projects. So that was great. So this takes us to our second question then. So one of the common issues that we've heard back from some of our customers is we're really good at planning our resources, but when there are materials involved and that material schedule needs to align and coordinate with the resource schedule, the people schedule, it's difficult because a lot of systems today do a good job. If you have an example of using Microsoft projects, it does a good job of managing people and dates and schedules. But when there are materials involved, which a lot of project-based organizations really have to deal with, not just people but also materials, they struggle, because primarily they manage materials in a separate solution, and the material schedule, the delivery schedule, and the people schedule, the resource schedule, don't really talk to each other. And so what happens, the challenge that they face is that they may have ordered materials to be on site, on a job site at a particular date, but because of delays in shipping, maybe they have long lead times, they have special order materials, a variety of factors could cause those delivery dates to change, right? And that would result in breaking that alignment between, hey, I need these materials on this date, and now it's going to be 2 weeks late, or it could be in some cases too early. So more often than not, the materials are not there on time. And so we have to spend a lot of money with our shipping carriers to expedite the materials to get them on time based on our resource schedule. So the question is, how do we avoid these unplanned costs, the expedited shipping costs? They're not in our budget, and we tend to do a lot of this just because we don't have good insight into our shipping schedules, and they don't tie in with our resource schedule. So Paul, how do we get that level of detail into our scheduling so that we can make sure materials and resources are all aligned?
Oh, that's again a good question. I think part of the answer is already in the question that you asked. So what if we could tie materials, for example, to a certain start date of an activity? So we can say at a certain date we need items and we need them to be on time. And what if the system can then calculate when the delivery date should be? And that's basically exactly how we do it. So let me go back to the system and show an example of another project that I have prepared for you. So again, I'm a project manager. I'm responsible for this project. And here's my project. And in the work breakdown structure, we do not only estimate time, and we estimate material and equipment, of course, but we also make a plan. So when you look at the advanced work breakdown structure, we do not only say, okay, we need certain materials, but we also literally say, when do we need these materials? Because as you can see here, my task or my activity starts at a certain date and should end at a certain date. And typically what you then will say is that at the 19th of September, I need to have certain materials on site. And so in this case, on the 9th of September, I need those HDMI cables. So that's let's say the demand date. And the system supports MRP, which means that if there is a demand in the system will try to fulfill that demand, and we call that supply. And usually that is a purchase order. Now, how do we do that? So here we have our dates, we have our materials, and then it would be really nice if we could visually see if we are on track or not. So do I have my resources, my materials on time? And what you can see here, if I fit this into the view, you can see that there is certain activities for procurement. So I have a procurement activity for audio video, for lighting and motorization, and for control panels. And what you can see here is that there's actually this little red triangle means that my supply of the materials will be too late because I need it at a certain date, represented by the start date of this activity, but it will be delivered 3 weeks late. So there we have an issue. The system will give you insight in that. So the only thing I need to do now is focus on this issue and trying to figure out what's going on. So what I can do is I can go into We call that project logistics. And project logistics actually is a view on the project which shows me the work breakdown structure again, and everything that's highlighted here in bold is a problem. So I have a demand, we call it a sales order on the project, and there's a supply, which is a purchase order. But I can see that my sales order will be delayed, or my delivery will be delayed due to that purchase order. Now, and typically what a project manager can do is then analyze this, or at least talk to the procurement department and say, hey, I have a problem here because the delivery date that I requested is the 16th of August, but the delivery date that was confirmed by my supplier is the 10th of September. So then we can discuss what to do about this. And this is actually helping you. It gives you insight in what's actually going on in your project with respect to items. Should we go to the next question?
Yeah, actually, I want to just take a few extra minutes on this because I think this highlights one of the core strengths of the solution. And just kind of step through the process, Paul. So we create a quote, right? And then against that quote, once it's approved by our customer, we convert that into an actual project. So that project now inherits all the requirements, if you will, of the quotation. And now that it's in a project environment, we start our planning process. So we know based on the plan and the WBS, the work breakdown structure, that we need to have certain materials delivered at a certain time based on the scheduling of our people on the job site. And so that creates a level of demand within the solution. And you have functions within the solution like MRP that goes out and analyzes how best the system can fulfill that demand. It could be materials are consumed from inventory, or in your example, you showed that it's being satisfied or fulfilled through purchase orders, right? And so the system then prompts, suggests, the creation of certain purchase orders based on those dates, and then that information is then overlaid into that visual planning Gantt chart that you showed us, which then helps us understand if there are discrepancies between the date that we need materials and the date the supplier then says we can deliver. It highlights that so we can be proactive in understanding where problems may arise before they actually arise. Is that kind of a good summary of the process?
I think you did an excellent job. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so this is really powerful because over the years when I've gone through the implementation cycle, it definitely is a challenge, especially with companies that deal with materials that are built to order. They may be specialized materials, so they have long lead times. It's always been challenging to make sure that those schedules align with the project schedules. So excellent. All right, Paul, let's go to the next question. Yeah, this is actually fairly common as well. So no surprise that this was in our top list of questions or challenges from our peers. A lot of subcontractors being used. It could be because they just don't have those skill sets in-house or just don't have the resources. So the question is, how easily can we see the subcontractor work? So which parts of our project have been subcontracted out? And then what is the schedule that those subcontractors are going to be following in order to meet our requirements? So Paul, you can take it away there.
Yeah, okay, I will. So going back to my project, in the work breakdown structure, we can actually say, okay, who is going to do the job? And we can do it ourselves, of course, but we can also say for certain activities, we have specific subcontracts. And what you can see, it's in the color orange. So we actually decided to say, okay, it shows up in orange in our breakdown structure. These activities are subcontracted. Now you can see that if I focus a little bit more on that installation project that we have, and if I select here on top subcontracting, you can see that all these activities are subcontracted. You can see that there's a cost rate and there's a cost value. We can even see, and that's one of the important things, we can keep track of the progress of these subcontracts. At this moment, there's no progress yet, but as soon as we start reporting in the system internal progress, that will also show on the subcontract. So we know actually how far are these subcontractors for this specific activity. Now, subcontracting can be done automatically. We can say there's always, for a certain activity, we always subcontract to the same subcontractor. So then the system can do this automatically. But we can also decide more or less ad hoc, where we say, okay, we do not have the capacity ourselves, so let's subcontract this part of the work breakdown structure. And if I select any of these activities, here you can see the subcontract that's linked to it. So typically what you do in the quotation phase is that you already start asking for quotes for subcontracts. At the moment that you transfer the quote into a project, also the subcontracts will be, let's say, copied into the project. So here I can see that there's one subcontract linked, but there's 3 activities in there. I can combine activities for the same type of job for the same subcontractor. And you can also still see to which activity in the hierarchy it's related. So it's related to structured cable and fibering. And this is also going to be the description that you will find on the purchase order, and that is related to the subcontract. And this activity is related to structured cable and fibering. So you can see immediately to which part of the subcontract this is linked. Now that's the part, let's say, the subcontract itself, and we have statuses, of course, and we can activate subcontracts, which means that purchase orders are created, and also we have then a commitment to our subcontractor. We can close subcontract lines, we can cancel them, we can remove them. And also, one of the things that's very important, if there is a change in the system, a change of scope, for example, it should also be possible to update your subcontract. Now, if that happens, then there's a little marker here that says the scope of the project was changed. So then we can actually go in and also update the subcontract, send a report to the subcontractor, knowing and discussing with him the change that we should make. So that's the part in the work breakdown structure. And then, of course, we have the planning. And probably it's not a surprise that this will tie into our visual plan that I showed earlier. And so if I go into the planning again, into the Gantt chart planning, we can actually recognize subcontracted work because it's a different color in the system. And that's how we can keep track of the subcontracts and also the progress that is being done on subcontracts.
So Paul, on subcontract change orders, those changes could be schedule changes or material requirement changes, right? Or services. It could be any of those changes, right?
Yeah, it could be anything that I estimate. So if it's a scope change, it could be that I need more materials, I need more hours, maybe more equipment hours. It could be any of those. Yeah.
Right. That's excellent. I really like this visual Gantt chart, which not just shows, the issues with materials being late, which we covered in an earlier question, but the fact that it highlights third-party services, and you're able to immediately drill back into the subcontractor PO, which is, we talked about the benefits of a fully integrated system, and you can really see that being showcased here. Subcontractor management is available in a lot of solutions, but the level of integration it has back to the project schedule is very limited, if at all. And so I really wanted to be able to highlight this level of integration, because this is what really makes that information useful, to be able to surface these scenarios right within a single screen, if you will. We've used the screen to be able to surface a variety of information already. And that is all due to the level of integration that is available in this solution. Excellent. Okay. Paul, let's go to our next question.
Yep.
Yeah, this is also a common challenge, especially if you have crews. Not all project-based companies work in crews. It could be individuals that are at the job site. And many solutions have the ability to track time for individuals. Not many solutions allow you to do crew time, and even fewer allow you to track time and equipment usage at the same time. So, Paul, let's tackle this, because I know you've got some significant amount of functionality here, and I'm looking forward to see what the solutions that you have.
Okay. Thank you. So this is an example of a weekly timesheet. So what I can do here is, as a project manager, for example, or supervisor, I can actually enter for my crew. I can enter the hours for different activities, even different projects, if you like, for all days of the week. But what I can also do, as James just mentioned, I can also enter hours, in this case, for equipment usage. And sometimes even, this is an example of a truck, I can also enter the counter values. So I can actually say how many miles or how many kilometers did I actually drive using this piece of equipment. And that ties directly into the maintenance module. And so you can see there's many links and relationships between the different modules that are available in Dynamics 365. In this case, there's a link between a timesheet and a maintenance request and the maintenance module that we also have in the solution. Another thing that we have here is on the hour entry, I can also go into my daily notes. And the daily notes are typical where you can say, for example, if you are dealing with health and safety, and when that's really important, you can actually register that. And this is a link directly to the human resources module, where any health and safety issue will result in a project and that will be followed up, even including injury or illness cost. And also, what I can also do is I can actually create a maintenance request directly from my timesheet saying, okay, there's a problem with a piece of equipment that I'm using, please fix it. So here again, there's a relation into the maintenance module, the asset management module in Dynamics 365.
Yeah, Paul, thank you for that. I mean, just right there, just to summarize the level of integration, the ability to capture the time, equipment usage, report the condition of the equipment, mileage as well, create a preventative maintenance order directly from that. The health and safety, that's really important, especially in order to comply with OSHA regulations and safety regulations. That is a critical component. And once again, on the theme of a fully integrated solution, you saw there the level of integration to asset management, to preventative maintenance, to HR, all coming from the collection of time, which is going to be used for costing purposes, for billing purposes. The equipment that you use may also be billed back to your customer. So capturing that usage at the same time entry is being made is important. Many other solutions, those are two separate entry points, and you can see what information could be lost when you're entering that data into two separate systems. And so bringing it all together into a single screen is excellent. Great, thank you, Paul, for that. Let's go on to our next question here. All right, and this is actually our last question. So this is really on a project management side, cost control. So many companies use a variety of different tools to manage their projects. Sometimes those tools are embedded into their solution, and sometimes it's external. We see a lot in our customers before they implemented the D365 F&O solution. Excel was the most popular project management and cost tracking tool. And it was always manually compiled, either on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis. Data was extracted from a variety of different solutions and put it together in Excel in a format that would allow project managers to be able to analyze that data, share that data with other people to have project meetings, status meetings, and then use that not just to look at the status, but also forecast, right? Are we on track, both in terms of cost, consumption, and schedule? Do we need more time than we originally budgeted? So that's where the EAC, ETC components come in. And then if you're dealing with fixed price projects, then earned value is also important, which attributes, based on certain formulae, the amount of value that has been worked on. And it helps you better represent the accumulation of costs and associated revenue on fixed price projects. It's much easier in time and materials projects because they're directly linked. But on fixed price, it's more complex because there may be certain costs that are front loaded. It just doesn't mean that your project is as far as the costs consumed represent, right? And so there's a variety of factors where earned value really helps you understand the true progress of fixed price projects. And so the question here is, what are the PM functions, the project management functions and cost control capabilities that are available in the D365 solution?
Okay, good question again. I will show that directly from my projects. So I created again the project 242, and when we go into the details into the advanced work breakdown structure, there's actually two levels that we report on. We've talked about cost codes. That's important. You can see in the work breakdown structure, each activity and also each estimate line has a cost code. So we can report on that level, but we can also do it in a more detailed way on activity level. Now, what you see here is that in the cost and revenue tab, we also show the actual cost. So when you enter hours using a timesheet, when you receive items in stock, those will become actual cost to the project. So you can see here that the actual cost is a certain amount. Now, when you then look at the progress and earned value, what we do is we capture the internal progress. It's a percentage, and then we compare that to the posted cost percentage. So when you post actual cost, that will be a certain percentage of your total cost. And when you compare those two, so the internal progress with your posted cost percentage, you can actually calculate if you're financially behind or ahead of schedule. Now, if you have posted 50% of the cost, but your internal progress is only 40, then you actually are behind schedule, so you need more money. The system will automatically calculate that for you. Now, these amounts are not so high, but you can actually see that if my internal progress is 20%, but I already posted 83.33%, then I have a big problem. And the system will tell you that, well, you need a variance, you need more money to finish this project. So $3,420 is actually needed to finish the project within, well, not within budget, but we need more money to finish this budget. And you can also see the earned value that is calculated by the system. So this is on activity level. And through a process of cost control, we can actually update the budget. And that means if I do that, and I go to my budget tab, then the system will show you that due to cost control, due to an internal process called cost control, we actually updated the budget. So we have an original cost value. So that was the cost value when we started the project. And we also have a current cost value. So in this case, there was we need less budget. So then my current cost value can go down. And this is a way that the project manager can manage their projects. We can also do that on cost code. So it's a choice whether you do that on cost code level or whether you do that on activity level. But here you can see an example where due to cost control, we actually lowered the budget. So now I have a current cost value that's lower than when I started. But I can also see the actual cost, the posted cost percentage, as opposed to the internal progress and the advice that the system then gives to change the budget. So these are two levels, James, that we can work with.
Yeah, Paul, you know, as I mentioned, I'm a big fan of that visual planning screen, but I love this screen as well, because as you can see, everything comes together in a single place. You don't have to go to a lot of different areas to look at your actual costs, your current effort, your budget, committed costs, earned value, your forecast that may impact your estimate to complete, and the variances. It's such an informative screen, you know, for a project manager to be able to see all of this, and there's no extraction of data here, right? I mean, this is all real time. It's being collected by the system as and when those transactions are appearing, and providing really up to the date information for project managers and whoever else has secure access to these screens. And you know, one thing we won't be showing, but to be aware of, is that all of this information is also available in analytical tools like Power BI, which is really the topic of our last webinar in this Quote to Cash series. So we'll you can look forward to seeing more analytics in that webinar. But thank you, Paul. That was actually our last question. So let's go back to the slide deck, and let's just wrap up with just a quick overview of Velosio. In today's, you know, ERP implementation, cloud-driven world, you know, the partners that you engage to help you with these implementations really need to provide a level of depth of service that did not exist in the past. Before, if you just were able to implement ERP, that would have been sufficient. But today, we need to be able to provide really a full service solution, because customers have much more complex needs, a variety of different work streams that need to be integrated. And as you can see from this slide, you know, over and above just the accounting and ERP solutions and implementations we provide, we also do that for customer relationship management, CRM, fully integrated, project service automation, the HR pieces, field service automation. And then we also provide services to the overall D365, Office 365 connectivity that we call Office Productivity, because Office 365 is fully integrated into this environment with a lot of interoperability between Word and Excel, Teams, SharePoint, workflow engines. They're all fully integrated into all of these applications. And I briefly mentioned about the analytics piece, which we'll be covering in our next webinar, which is Power BI components. And then we give you the flexibility of hosting using the Microsoft Azure cloud that D365 is deployed on, and by far the most popular deployment model. But we also offer private and hybrid cloud services. So you're not forced to go with one or the other. We provide a variety of different options, and we have experts that are able to help you through this process. And so the last slide here, Paul, is really covering some of our IP, our intellectual property that we bring to the table. It is branded as Axio. And what Axio is really is a rapid deployment tool, plus provides very specific industry expertise and ongoing solution management feature sets. So when we talk about implementations, the traditional implementation is really all about coming in and understanding your business processes and then mapping that to transition into a future state process. What Axio does is that over the last 15 or so years, we have been able to gather best practices for many of these work streams, whether it's on the accounts receivable side, the general ledger, cash management, project management, any of those major components or modules. We have developed best practices and embedded that within the solution. And so what you get as a customer when you engage Velosio is not starting everything from scratch, but you're going to start an implementation in a fully configured system that represents best practices. Many, many times we are asked by our customers, hey, you guys are the experts. Why don't you tell us how we should do this, right? And that's precisely what we've done. We have taken all of that expertise and embedded it into this tool called Axio, which is really a collection of accelerators, those pre-configured components, the flow charts and the Visio diagrams that showcase the best practices, step-by-step instructions on how to perform certain tasks. You get that on day one. That is truly a differentiator from many implementation approaches by other partners. And so what this does for your implementation, other than the acceleration, is also it reduces your costs of implementation. So we are actually providing tremendous benefits. Definitely is foundational for our implementations, as well as a true differentiator. With that, Bill, I'm going to turn it back to you. Thank you for the time, everybody, for attending.
Yeah, great job today, Paul. Great job today, James. Thank you guys for setting a time aside to do the webcast. We also want to thank everybody who attended today. We appreciate you participating in the Quote to Cash series. As James said, we've got another event coming up at the end of October. We'd love to see you attend that as well. If you'd like to, you can see on the screen there the velosio.com/QTC, and you can find the next event to register, or you can, as James said, replay any of the previous events. So that will conclude today's event, and thank you again for coming.